let's all Barrett.
Joe Douglas. How he's so bad that he made Joe Douglas look bad.
Yeah, what's going on here? What? Tell us what's going on here, because Jason speaks, as you have already seen. Jason speaks for what I would say is the overwhelming majority of people in this city who respond to that trade like this guy doesn't know his ass from his elbow.
Well, the bottom line is the Colts drew the inside straight in this situation, and the Eagles and Howie Roseman tried to obviously create a market, never developed. It wasn't there. It was only two teams, the Chicago Bears being that second team. Bears would have offered more, but remember that leverage that Carson Wentz had and he used, didn't want to go to Chicago. And he made it very, very clear that he didn't want to go to Chicago. So these people saying, well, the Bears offered him just a first-round pick, just do it. Who cares about Carson's feelings? Well, the Bears didn't offer a first-round pick. They would have offered a first-round pick if Carson was in on going to that organization, but he wasn't. So basically, Chris Ballard, I've talked about it from the start, really smart GM, really shrewd guy, never came off his original offer. This is his original offer. And basically it comes down to the Colts have 3 months to figure out what they have in Carson Wentz. Because if he plays poorly or he gets injured, they don't want to give up that 2022 first-round pick. They'll just bench him. If he plays well, they'll have no problem giving up that first-round pick. They'll enjoy it because they'll have a quarterback. So
yeah, they have all the variables.
I think it was a great deal from the Colts' perspective.
Totally agree.
Right. Well, now, what do you think happens with them at the draft at 6? Is it a foregone conclusion now that they're going to take a quarterback?
I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, but I think it's on the table. I think it has to be. It's always about evaluation. If they like a player, and I use Justin Fields as an example, you kind of know Trevor Lawrence is going 1, Zach Wilson's probably going 2 to Jake's Jets, so they're not going to be in a position to get those guys. Now they have some extra draft capital. Maybe they can move up to get Fields if they have to. Maybe they like Trey Lance as a player. So it's about evaluation. But if they think one of those two guys is going to be a superstar quarterback, you have to take him. You have to. You have to explore it at the bare minimum.
When you get up to that point in the draft, John, and you have now a question mark at that position, it makes all the sense in the world to draft a QB, because if you have a question mark at that position, you're ultimately not going anywhere.
No, and I agree, Jason. You go back to Howie Roseman in 2016. He said that. He said exactly.
Yeah.
If you're
That's why they made the deal.
Position, you have to take advantage of it, and you have to solve the quarterback position. Yep. Obviously, the Eagles didn't think they'd be in this position. It didn't work out as well or as long as they thought it would have. But, hey, it is what it is now. They're in that position again, and they have to take advantage of it. So if they believe in those players, they have to take one of them. There's no question.
They may have to move up further, though, to Jake's point.
Yeah,
well, that's the thing, and I'm sure Jake has questions as well about how this whole thing impacts his squad. So I don't want you to feel like you have to force in something with Wentz by all means.
No, I'm actually just curious, guys, because where does Jalen Hurts fit in all this? They used a second-round pick on him a year ago. Like, is it just a foregone conclusion? We wasted a second-rounder on him, and we're moving on. We're going to bring in another veteran quarterback or draft someone 6th overall or move up. I mean, is there any scenario where Jalen Hurts is given the chance to be the starter this year?
I think there's a scenario he's the starter. I mean, we don't know the Eagles and their thought process with Jalen Hurts. Maybe they came off of last season and thought this guy is a starting quarterback in the NFL. I personally find that hard to believe. I don't think the sample size is large enough. Remember, it's not only the Eagles, but the rest of the NFL thought Jalen Hurts wasn't worthy of being that top 15 level pick. He's a second-round pick. And a lot of teams didn't even have him graded as that. So you could argue the Eagles valued him more than most teams. I find it very hard to believe the Eagles are going to get into this process, do their due diligence, and say Justin Fields doesn't have a bigger upside, for instance, than Jalen Hurts. I find that very hard to believe. Now, can they get him? That's the difficult part.
Well, Jake, if let's just say Houston makes a deal with the Jets and they send Deshaun Watson there for the second overall pick, right, as part of the package coming back, what is the consensus down there, that who they would take with that pick?
I can't say, Harry, there is a consensus at this point. It is complicated, though. I think the Texans might have to be forced to taking anyone but Justin Fields, because Deshaun Watson's agent, David Mulligetta, is the same agent for Justin Fields. So there's a thought here in Houston that Mulligetta would not allow his client, another quarterback client, another top pick, to be a guy, within, the Texans organization. So by default, Jack Easterby, a faithful man of God, might have to draft the Mormon quarterback out of BYU.
There you go.
Look at that. It's amazing how this whole thing plays out to where we still need the Jets, right? Or the Texans. We still can't you can mock draft the hell out of this thing and you can guess away, but so much of this is still predicated on one move where the Jets and the Texans really just, if they don't do business, then you can start looking at the Jets taking somebody with that pick. Maybe they trade back, but I feel like even with this movement of Wentz, we still have that one trade there with the Jets and the Texans. I'm curious, though, real quick, as far as the Bears are concerned, John, do you think they go high, like maybe trade a second rounder for Derek Carr, or do you think they go safe and maybe bring in Sam Darnold, Marcus Mariota for a discount?
I think Sam Darnold has always been the most likely scenario for the Bears because it is a little bit safer. There is an upside there. You can kind of talk yourself into, Adam Gase probably ruined him. So I think there's that part of it as well. Technically not available yet. So, for people speculating that he is.
Uh-oh.
Oh, we're getting John going in and out with the audio.
That's no good.
Yeah.
They're definitely listening, though. That's for sure. Maybe they don't trade him just yet, but the Jets are definitely not. Joe Douglas is not hanging up any phone calls when teams are calling. That we know for sure.
Yeah. But from an Eagles perspective, now how far down the road till Ertz gets traded? He might end up in Indianapolis.
Surprised he wasn't part of the deal, Harry.
I know.
To maximize it a little bit, but yeah, you're right. They probably know that they're going to have to just cut Ertz, and they can not have him part of a deal and give up anything and just sign him.
Yeah. Do we have John back or?
Yeah, John's here. He's talking.
Yeah, but we're not hearing him. He's going to probably have to re-log in, I think.
Is that what's happening here?
Yeah.
Needs a reboot.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about this scenario for the Texans, by the way? Say hypothetically they do make a trade with the Jets and they're sitting there with the second overall pick. What if they don't love Mulligetta's client, Justin Fields? That's an issue. Or, Zach Wilson maybe is not their guy for whatever reason. What if they traded down and accumulated even more picks, right? Nick Caserio has a 6-year contract, so he could be here and oversee a long rebuild. So if he takes the second overall pick after he got probably at least 2 other ones from the Jets or the Dolphins, let's say, in a Deshaun Watson trade, he could trade down from 2 or 3, assuming it's one of those teams that had acquired Deshaun, and get even more picks, and then the Eagles could come up from 6 to 3. Like the Jets did with the Colts, giving up 3 second-rounders in 2018, or go up from 6 to 2 even. So there's so many scenarios that can unfold here.
And not to, I know we got John back, but also you can't forget about Carolina too. Maybe they jump up and jump ahead of the Eagles to pick a quarterback because they're obviously, Bridgewater is a bridge, and I think they've gotten to the other side of that bridge and they're ready to move on. And let's not forget about Atlanta. Right? Maybe Atlanta move. I mean, Matt Ryan could get traded.
Yeah,
possibly.
I tell you, one scenario as we now this might be the first time we've gone to the 6 box on the program here, right? I love it.
Now, Barrett, you did your hit on NBC Sports Philadelphia. What was the tone?
Oh, the tone was I had to make sure that I ate my just due. That Howie Roseman was able to pull off a trade in a non-tradable QB market right now. He was able to execute that, so I got to give him his props on that. The third rounder we got skunked with, but hey, for the additional two, the second rounder, I really think it's going to be a 1. So, I mean, he pulled it off. He made it happen. I can't say anything about it, man. But he was able to do it, man. But he will play 75% of the snaps, so he'll get that first rounder. Plus, he's going to fit in that system, and he will become unbroke. He will play at a high level, and we're going to be hating and regretting to see Carson Wentz play at a high level with the best offensive line in the NFL going into next year.
See, this is the perfect situation for Howie, Barrett, because if he sends him to Indy and he has success, people will say, see, Frank Reich was the reason he had success, therefore solidifying his decision to fire Doug.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. This is all a big tangled web. This is like Howie in the Spider's Web, that movie with the chick.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Jason, and I'll be as blunt as possible. I don't care enough, not as a human being, I'm saying as a quarterback. I don't care enough about Carson Wentz to continue to go through hoops and loops and bend over backwards. You can find new quarterbacks. You can find, and if it's Jalen Hurts, which I don't think it is at the moment, or if it's somebody at number 6 or moving up, or even if I have to wait 2, 3, 4, 5 years, there was a point in this where it just had to end.
I agree.
It had to end.
Well, that's the thing, but just finding a quarterback, Eitan, is not that easy. Because look how long it took him from McNabb. I mean, with Kevin Cobb and Mike Vick.
Well, yeah, they're idiots. Yeah. If you're not an idiot, it doesn't take as long. But I just feel like, I don't know, I'll throw it out here to the gang with the 6 of us here. But it felt like, not even from me or fan or anything like that standpoint, it's just this thing had to end. And maybe this isn't a situation where you keep a guy around for 10 years constantly trying to fix every small little thing, and you look back and say, well, what the hell did we just do the last 10 years?
Well, definitely had to end. I would agree with that. It had to end. The Eagles had to turn the page. They got to start planning. We just, the NFL set the floor of the salary cap at $180 million today. It might go up a little bit from there, but at most it's going to be 185. So the Eagles have to start budgeting and getting their house in order, because they're about 45, 46 million over the cap.
Yeah.
That Carson Wentz trade, that was the first part of it. Now they got to move forward. They got a lot of difficult decisions to make. And yeah, it was overdue. It had to be done. I think that NFL Network report, I think it was James Palmer, about Denver not being interested, and Denver thinking Drew Lock maybe was a better option than Carson Wentz. I mean, at some point, there's no interest. Howie did his best to create this market. There's no market. There's no interest.
Nobody wanted.
Yeah, by a self-inflicted wound. But again, that's a self-inflicted wound of creating an untenable situation, knowing it couldn't move forward here. So why was anybody going to give up a ton when they had to do it?
Right. And that's it. They had to do it.
They had to do it. You're right, Eitan.
He pulled it off. I'm not going to lie. He pulled it off. He created a market that wasn't there. And then he force-fed a trade in which he's ended up getting a first-round pick. I hate to do it to myself because I did it to myself.
It's not a first-round pick yet.
Well, it will be. He'll play over 75% of the time.
Again, here you go.
But Barrett, the Colts bought 3 months. They bought 3 months. If Carson stinks up the joint, they'll just bench him and say, we're not giving up that first-round pick. If he plays well, that's what I said before
they'll be happy to give it up.
And
they're happy to give it up.
25th or 26th pick.
Yeah.
Overall.
Because then they're making the playoffs.
Right. Well, all right, so but see, I'm thinking in the aspect that, I'm not thinking like Eitan thinks that he's broke and he has no precedence that, from this point going forward, that he'll play any better than what he's, saw last year. I look at Carson. I say he's only got to improve. He has to improve because you can't get as worse as he played this last season. There's no way. Just by listening alone and running the offense the way it's supposed to be run, he has the intangibles to play a lot better than what he played last year. So I'm just thinking it's a foregone conclusion that he is going to do it because Carson doesn't want to play that bad. He doesn't want his legacy to go in that direction. So, I mean, he's going to play at a higher level just for the simple fact of he doesn't want to be looked at as the quarterback that was a bust, period, point blank.
Well, here's the thing, though.
No, and I think he's got to play. I think you're right.
Trade.
He's got to play at a higher level.
Yeah, but
no question.
We can't spin this as a positive trade because there's a conditional pick 2 years from now.
No.
The
Eagles did the
terrible deal.
Hey, guys, they traded 5 picks to get Carson Wentz. 5 picks.
Yes.
They gave him a $128 million extension 20 months ago. They just ate, Jeffrey Lurie just ate $33.8 million to get him out of the building.
Yep.
No, this is not a positive for the Philadelphia Eagles. They got as much as they could at the end. That's it.
So we have conversations every day about it, but we're in Philadelphia, and I'm curious, Jake, as far as just what type of emotion or response or conversation does Wentz even invoke right now? Because we're going to be biased moving forward, and knowing that we had him here and that there was a history here, and there's always going to be that bias that you have. But if it's just in a day-to-day, because Wentz has been such a popular topic of discussion this offseason, even back to the regular season when he got benched for Jalen Hurts. So I don't know how people view outside of Indianapolis now, hey, that's our new quarterback, and I'm sure they're excited, or Philadelphia, which is mixed probably at best. I have no idea. Outside of people like John who cover this game and have access to this game and give us a clearer perception, at least of the game, I don't know how the average person who's talking about the NFL even views Carson Wentz. And I say that with true a sense of ignorance, not trying to lead or anything down any type of specific avenue.
Yeah, Eitan, I think his legacy and what he's accomplished is among the more complicated things we've seen in sports over the last 20-something years. I mean, here's a guy that was a top pick. He was the MVP of the league before he got hurt in 2017. I mean, you guys have talked about this all the time on your show and locally. And without him, they don't get the 1 seed going into the playoff run. Of course, Foles comes in. We know the rest of the story. But after that, you know, he came back in 2018. He wasn't great. He got hurt. Foles then gets him into the playoffs. And I thought last year, 2019, I thought he played well given the fact he was throwing to, you know, converted quarterbacks at wide receiver. They had all these injuries, and he played a full 16 games. But, of course, he gets hurt in the playoff game after the Clowney hit against the Seahawks. So, you know, coming into this year, you can make the case that this was the first, you know, just truly horrible year. And then you have the issues with Doug Pederson and if him fighting with the front office. So it's such a complicated legacy for Wentz because, you know, you guys as Eagles people, you don't have a Super Bowl if he doesn't play as well as he did in 2017, getting you guys, you know, home field throughout the playoffs. But, you know, here he is a couple of years later being traded. So it's such a complicated legacy. I wonder if, like, over time, maybe appreciation will build up for the guy, you know, as long as further along as we go away from, you know, that, you know, magical fairy tale Super Bowl season. But I think he has a chance to have a decent year in Indy. They have all the ingredients of a successful team. So it wouldn't shock me if he plays well. I think, as you guys have talked about, and Jason, you nailed it. It was an untenable situation. They had to cut bait. They had to move on. Yes, it's self-inflicted, but, you know, what can you do? You can't fire the owner, and they're not going to fire Roseman. So I think they did what they could with a pretty bad market, all things considered.
John, I think we can fire the owner.
John, in your view,
let's get people together and fire the owner. Let's go.
John, in your view, how did it become so untenable? What was the main ingredient to that? Carson himself or
all of the
above? No, I do think Carson, you know, has culpability in this. I do think his mechanics kind of slipped to a pretty significant degree. We've talked about for a long time this shift from John DeFilippo to Press Taylor, more of a hard-nosed positional coach to a a peer, for lack of a better term. And I do think Carson needs to realize, whether it's this off season, whether it's going to be virtual or not, he's got to start rebuilding those mechanics. So from that standpoint, in a performance setting, he's got to take on some of this criticism. From a coaching offensive standpoint, look, he was upset that he got benched, and that's understandable. I mean, everybody's competitive. Nobody wants to be benched. You certainly don't want to be benched after you were given that contract extension, essentially said, you're my guy. And he took that really hard. And I thought that people kind of tied that to Doug Pederson, but it was much more than that. It was about the organization and Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman going along with that benching. He just wanted out of here at the end, bottom line.
Yeah, when you get cooked and you're cooked, you just got to go.
Help me understand this, though. Like, Jason's right, where if you just boil this down to the atoms of it, it's a guy was cooked. He has to go. They have to get something back in return. Cut your loss. I don't know what happened to Barrett, but hopefully we'll get him back up here. But look at what's happened over the last, I don't know, year and a half. I mean, you had a quarterback who took people that people in Houston didn't know who Greg Ward was. Jake Asman can attest to that. Before he helps take these guys to the playoffs.
Well, that's on them in Houston.
Well, yeah, fair enough. Mr. College football.
Exactly right.
Ward was a star.
He was a stud quarterback for the Cougars.
The Cougar fans knew who he was. I can't sit here and say I watched a lot of UH football, though, Aton.
That's the thing. They don't watch enough in their own city of UH. Right? So, yeah, then you draft Jalen Hurts. You have all this stuff going back and forth with Hurts. You have that bizarre week where Doug Pederson is going out of his way to say how much we'll see Hurts. And then this report comes out the night of that Seahawks game in which we don't see him more than 2 plays. And then we have the benching, and then Carson apparently is so upset about the benching, yet the team moves on from the coach who benched him. And then now they move on from the guy who we're told is the reason why they moved on from him, which is, again, a long list of people who they moved on from because of the quarterback. And then when it's all said and done, they move on from that very same quarterback who not only did they bend over backwards recently with, as all the personnel stuff, John, but also invested so much capital in from day one.
Right.
This doesn't make any sense to me.
And yet the guy that did all that moving, or most of that moving, is the guy they need to move on from.
Yeah.
Sam Hinkie, Harry, is looking at this like that's some pretty big job security right there.
Yeah.
But you're right, Aton. All of that adds up to one thing. It's called organizational malfeasance and dysfunction. And that's, as with Howie around, that's what you get. And look, let's not act like Howie didn't have a piece of this either. Drafting J.J. Arcega-Whiteside over DK Metcalf, and then having the balls to cite injury when he drafted Sidney Jones in the 2nd round and sat on him for a year. And then also couple that with drafting Jalen Reagor, who they threw their head coach under the bus and said that he was the one that wanted him. I don't think Doug Pederson was out scouting TCU games the season before. So don't give me that. And you didn't take Justin Jefferson, who just set an NFL record for receiving yards for a rookie. So, Howie, there's egg all over your face. And you're just astonishing.
What does Doug Pederson think about this deal? What was his reaction?
I think he's laughing. Oh gosh.
He's laughing. Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, no problem. I have no problem with people criticizing Howie Roseman for a number of those reasons. I do think Jeffrey Lurie's getting a pass. I mean, Jeffrey Lurie, it's his organization. Obviously, you know, you can't fire the owner anyway. So it's baked in, part of that pass. But,
wouldn't it be great if you could?
I will say, you know, remember the Eagles were going to keep Doug Pederson until Jeffrey didn't like his plans, his coaching staff, what he wanted to do moving forward. He changed his mind, put the Eagles behind the 8 ball. They were behind in the coaching hiring cycle. then you talk about this organization. Look, they wanted Carson Wentz back. The original plan was, let's start this reclamation project. I don't want to eat $34 million. Then they changed their mind on that because Carson, you know, there was loggerheads there. So I think before you get to Howie Roseman, you got to give a lot of this criticism for dysfunction starts right at the top, right at the
chief
top.
enabler in charge.
Yeah,
right
no
there.
doubt about it. Yeah.
Yep.
Mr. Emotional Intelligence.
Right now. Yeah. I mean, the Jets, they don't have this level of dysfunction anymore, it seems. Once they got rid of Adam Gase, maybe that's just part of the whole makeover, but it seems like, right? Wouldn't you rather be the Jets right now?
Well, yeah, they got the number 2 pick.
Yeah.
And finally, New England is looking like a mortal football team in that division.
Yeah, cap space as well. I mean,
yeah.
Once the Jets made some cuts, they could have. I think they could leapfrog. I think Indy has the 3rd most cap space right now in the league, and that will obviously go down as they absorb the Wentz contract. But they'll be 2nd right behind Jacksonville as far as cap space. Once they make a couple cuts, they have 9 picks in the top 3 rounds over the next 2 drafts, 4 ones over the next 2 years. So, obviously you got to hit on the picks, but, Eagles fans like Joe Douglas. That's how he got a GM job in the first place. So he had a good first draft. So the Jet fan is hopeful that Douglas hits on the picks like he did last offseason with Mekhi Becton, Denzel Mims, and Ashton Davis. And then the key thing is, can Robert Saleh be, a competent coach? I guarantee you guys, he will be a significant upgrade over Adam Gase, but the bar is still pretty low as far as Jet head coaches. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm very confident he's going to be better than Adam Gase. I think that's an easy bet right there.
Well, the Eagles like being, trendsetters, and they have now reset the bar for dead money. And I don't know if anybody's ever going to beat this record.
No, they slammed it.
Jesus,
it's amazing. It was 22.2 million, and now it's 33.8. That is
incredible.
Destroying a precedent. That's not just typically you go up a couple $100,000. That's how badly they bungled this situation and had to move on from Carson Wentz. I mean, that sums it up more than anything else. That money.
We'll raise it 33%.
Well, let me ask you, though, how much of that, and you've explained this earlier, how much of that, it was all going to be allocated anyway, right? So how much of that?
They already spent that money, but nonetheless, you don't want to be the guy. You don't want to look at your peers at the NFL meeting and say, I'm the guy who blew this up. Not Daniel Snyder, not Jerry Jones. I'm the guy. Remember, it went from 21 million for Brandon Cooks to 21.8 million for Antonio Brown. 22.2 million to Jared Goff. Now it's 22.2 to 33.8. That is not going to go over well at Billionaires Row on Palm Beach Island.
You know why it doesn't go over well? Is because now owners are going, see what you did? Now you set a precedent.
Yeah.
Anybody that wants to leave and they have that kind of money left on the dead cap, they're going to cite, well, the Eagles did it with Wentz.
Right. You see what you did here?
Exactly.
Yep. Exactly. I could hear Harry saying that.
How much of this, sorry.
Go ahead.
How much of this is an active precedent? Meaning, if you didn't have Jalen Hurts and you just had the 6th pick, they could bring Wentz back. They could call Wentz's bluff and say, we'll bring you back. We'll draft whoever. I don't care if it's Mac Jones. Whoever you draft is now a rookie quarterback behind a veteran quarterback. You don't have that dynamic of Jalen Hurts, and you essentially have last year, this year, where it's like, hey, you want it out. You can play for your future. You can come here. You can make it work. And if you don't want to play at all, then we have a rookie we can go to. You now have multiple layers of dysfunction that you have to sift through, where it almost made the Eagles, or virtually made the Eagles, locked in a position where they had to like they could not have brought Wentz back and passed up on a quarterback at 6 and still kept Hurts. That would be even worse in the owners' meeting than looking up and saying, I blew 30+ million on a player.
It's a good point. A guy tweeted me and goes, Howie drafts Jalen Hurts because he's concerned Wentz can't stay healthy. Then he trades Wentz in part for a pick that is determined if Wentz stays healthy.
Right.
What a gong show, Harry.
Right.
Ron, I know you got to roll, but real quick, is there any truth to the report that Wentz kept trying to push that Conor McGregor whiskey on Howie Roseman at a team function? He was hanging all over him, yelling, "You got to try this, Howie.
You got to try this buckle."
That was the moment when Roseman knew it was time to move on and drafted Hurts a month later.
I think the moment, like I said, was the realization that people in this league thought Drew Lock, or at least some people thought Drew Lock was a better quarterback than Carson Wentz. I think at that point, Howie said, "Oh, I got to bail out of this. I got to bail out of this and get what I can get."
All right. We appreciate
Thanks, John.
Speaking of bailing out, Jake, I'm worried. Thanks, John. I'm worried about your power.
His phone,
man.
yeah.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm gonna step out and go right back to the car.